What's the word, y'all? We back. This has been the most requested video of all time. Yeah, and pretty much the top comment on all the videos from last week was like, Kenny, react to this. Kenny, react to this. So here I am, a man of the people, man. Predicting how many future Hall of Famers on every NBA roster. Should be interesting. It should be really, really interesting because I think that the Basketball Hall of Fame is very, very open. It's very loose in comparison to like the Baseball Hall of Fame, bro. You could have been an amazing player for 10 plus years, and the Baseball Hall of Fame is like, nah, you ain't do this enough. You ain't do this enough. But the NBA Hall of Fame is like, hey, if you had 5 to 6 years of greatness, you're probably going to end up in the Hall of Fame. So I'm curious to what Greg Schwartz believes about some of these NBA players. And of course, I'm giving my opinion. But all y'all know my opinion is my opinion. You may disagree, which is completely fine. That shouldn't make you hate the video or anything, you know what I'm saying? Or vice versa. You're not my enemy because we disagree, and I shouldn't be yours if we disagree. So the Hall of Fame is the highest honor of any sport, with only 150 players receiving a call since the end. That's actually surprising. 150 seems way low compared to like when I be looking at the Hall of Fame, many names I ain't never heard of before. Guys that played in the 50s and 60s. I feel like there's a lot of those, but only 150 players. That's very interesting. So the criteria is we have Hall of Fame locks, we have players on the bubble, and we have rising stars, players in their few seasons who don't have the necessary resume yet, but have the time and skill set to become Hall of Famers. That's very interesting because that's important. Their consideration of rising stars are players that have the skill set, but just don't have the resume just yet, but maybe in 10 years they will. Locks are veteran players with extremely high Hall of Fame probability, and on the bubble guys climbing the Hall of Fame probabilities list who have not yet established themselves as a lock. Okay, Atlanta Hawks. A lock is Vince Carter, 100%. And rising stars will be Trae Young for sure, 100%. 95%. Let's be honest with each other. It's a lock, like lock, 100%. I don't know where he got the probabilities from. I know that Bleach Report has, not Bleach Report, but Basketball Reference has like a Hall of Fame probability list, and maybe that's where he's jacking this percentage from. But let's take a look at Vince Carter for what it is. He is 100% a Hall of Fame lock. Lock it in. First ballot. And then Trae Young, also just in his young season. Oh, they have John Collins here too, which is very interesting. Both players very young. Too early to tell, so understandably on the rising stars list. It takes, for me at least, it takes a lot to get to the Hall of Fame notion for me, right? Again, my Basketball Hall of Fame is a lot different than the NBA's Basketball Hall of Fame, where like you need to be talented, but you also have to have the accolades. Trae Young is about as talented as it gets as far as the rising stars, but he needs to do things like let's get some playoff berths, let's get some playoff runs, let's win some awards here and there. But he started off very early and already an all-star in the second season, so he's on the right trajectory. So I can understand that. Next, Kemba Walker and Jayson Tatum. Kemba Walker, at this point in his career, is not a Hall of Famer. You know what I'm saying? So it makes sense that he's on the bubble. He's 30 years old at this point. So in order for him to get over that hump, he's going to have to help the Boston Celtics win at least a championship and be a huge part of that. We ain't talk about, no, you know how some players, they wait until they're 35 years old, they switch teams, and they're the 12th man on the roster and they get a ring. We don't count those. We don't count those. In order for him to end up being in the Hall of Fame, he has to be a significant portion of a Boston Celtics championship team in the near future. So right now, with him being 15%, it makes sense because there are a lot of point guards from like the era where I was growing up that were very good, but not Hall of Fame worthy. You know what I'm saying? I'm talking like, I mean, if Gilbert Arenas didn't do what he did, he probably would have a Hall of Fame career. But I'm just talking about players in that mold. You know what I'm saying? Just very good players, fun to watch. But just didn't have the resume. I think Kemba Walker at this point is like a 3-time, 4-time All-Star in his career. That's just not enough. This is not enough. No championships, all-star, no awards on top of it, so not enough right now. Jayson Tatum has the skill set for sure to be in that conversation, and with him being on a team that's contending right now, who knows where this team will be in 5 years. Maybe he gets a quick championship. Maybe he could be the best player on a championship quality team and stuff like that. So I believe Jayson Tatum is on the right thing with being on the rising stars, and I agree with Kemba Walker being on the bubble, but it's like on not even on the good side of the bubble. It's like he's, you know what I'm saying, he's 30 years old already. He's 30 years old already. But I'm sure a player we're going to talk about is Kyle Lowry. We'll talk about Kyle Lowry because he's got to be on this list. Hall of Fame lock, Kevin Durant. I would go out on a limb and say, for me personally, Kyrie Irving is a Hall of Fame lock. Yes, I know. I understand. His resume is not super incredible, but he hit one of the biggest shots in basketball history. Champion, like second best player on the championship team. Greatest comeback in NBA history, big part of it. Y'all know that graphic of LeBron having 42 and Kyrie Irving having 41. He did that type of stuff playoff-wise. Changing I wouldn't say changed the game, but the best handle of all time. I mean, like stuff like that maybe don't show up in the box score, but just like impact. I mean, a dude, I would say he's higher than a 65% in my personal list. I would say he is going to be a Hall of Famer. Especially since he still has years left, right? Him and Kevin Durant playing together may end up getting the Brooklyn Nets a championship in the near future. Then after that, you can't tell me a two-time champion as the second best player is not enough. Especially with the not just being the second best player, but being an all-star caliber player as the second best player. So yeah. Next, Charlotte Hornets 0. There's not much I can really say. I mean, anything can happen in the NBA. Yeah, I'm saying anything can happen in the NBA. Maybe Miles Bridges comes out next season and he has a Pascal Siakam type jump, but all things are telling me that won't happen. So right now I can agree with 0. Bulls, I can agree with 0. But Rising Stars, as far as offensive skills says, Zach LaVine is very, very talented, but he'd have to do a lot in the remainder of his career to even be a consideration for the Hall of Fame. We're talking about making multiple All-Star games, being the best player on the very good teams, and even that's probably not going to be enough. He needs to win some awards. He's going to have to win championships. So yes, I'm agreeing with the Bulls being a 0 as well, and that's coming from a diehard Bulls fan. It is just way too early to see Kobe and be like, let's talk about his Hall of Fame. You know what I'm saying? So as much as I would want to say like, yeah, let's go, Kobe. We only have like 2 really good months of Kobe White playing basketball under his resume. And it's just not enough for me to start thinking about Hall of Fame. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, we'll keep it moving. Kevin Love's an interesting case. I think he will end up in the Hall of Fame. Championship player. A player that changed his game completely to become a championship player. Thinking about where Kevin Love was and his play style with Minnesota and how it transitioned to where he ended up in Cleveland is completely different. And then I'm going to take into consideration those years in Minnesota. I'm just going to get 20 games left to right, and nobody's going to stop me. Obviously, he never had a playoff berth there. But I wouldn't say that's due to him. That's due to a terrible front office never being able to build a team around him. I would say, yeah. Get Kevin Love in the Hall of Fame. Not as a lock yet, but I could see him being like a second ballot Hall of Fame. Let's say Kevin Love doesn't do anything else for the rest of his career. He sits in Cleveland and he rots, which God forbid, because I hope he goes to another team where he can compete. I don't think he's going to be like a first ballot Hall of Fame guy, but second ballot, sure, yeah. Drummond 2.1%. Makes sense. One thing we can't agree on is that Drummond is one of the best rebounders of all time, but he's also still young. I ain't giving up on Drummond just yet. I have not given up on Drummond just yet. I don't think he's going to end up in the Hall of Fame. Is not what I'm saying, but like, I think he could probably have some more All-Star appearances if he decides to stop being stubborn. You know what I'm saying? But Kevin Love, yes. Colin Sexton, if we're being honest with each other, I haven't watched an extreme amount of Colin Sexton throughout his first couple years in the NBA, so I'm just leaving it at that because I don't really know. Next, Dallas Mavericks. Luka on this trajectory is going to end up in the Hall of Fame. God forbid injuries, and he was 100% capable of being the best player on the championship level team. Rising Stars makes sense. Porzingis, same thing. But Luka, again, if I'm predicting the future, I'm gonna say that Luka will end up in the Basketball Hall of Fame if he can stay healthy throughout the course of his career. Next. Jokic, Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., Paul Millsap at a 5.5%. Paul Millsap is going to fall into the category of players that may be forgotten about throughout the course of history because he's not going to end up being a Hall of Famer, but he's going to be, I think it's the starters guys who are now no dunks. They have this thing named Hall of Very Good. Players like Joe Johnson and Paul Millsap, they were very good for their career, but not good enough to be Hall of Fame players. The Hall of Very Good, Paul Millsap is a perfect example of that. He's a multiple-time All-Star. He's been on all defensive teams, but he's not good enough to make the Hall of Fame. So yes, he is in the Hall of Very Good. That should be a video of me going through history And I pick my own personal Hall of Very Good, because like Joe Johnson, Paul Millsap types. Then we have Jokic. It's still very early in Jokic's career. He's only 25 years old, but he is going towards the path, I could say, of a Hall of Fame career. We'd have to see what type of playoff success he has as the guy. This year is going to be an interesting one. Yeah, I think he's on the trajectory. Right now, he is, in my opinion, the best center in the NBA. And he just needs to get some accolades to accompany that. Jamal Murray's interesting. Still too early. They gave that boy a big-time bag, and I need to see him produce a little bit more than what he has. And Michael Porter Jr. has only been in the league for like 6 months playing basketball, so I'm not gonna have an opinion on Michael Porter Jr. Next, Blake Griffin and Derrick Rose. I think that's probably the reason why y'all wanted me to react to this, because as a diehard Derrick Rose fan, y'all probably think I see this as disrespectful. I don't, though. Derrick Rose, the way I've always seen it is he's had a Hall of Fame season that was his MVP year, but not a Hall of Fame career at this point. And that's one of the main reasons why I would love to see Derrick Rose end up in a different city, a different team where he can compete, and not just sitting in Detroit where the next seasons they're going to win like 25 games, because that doesn't help his Hall of Fame candidacy. Yeah, I think at this point in his career, Derrick Rose is going to end up being the only NBA MVP to not make it to the Hall of Fame. Again, I try to be as realistic as possible, y'all. I would love to see him make it there, but he's only like a 3-time All-Star. You know what I'm saying? 1-time MVP. That one MVP season is legendary in my book. But if we were just putting players in the Hall of Fame based on 3 years, then the Hall of Fame would have more than 150 players. You know, you get what I'm saying? So I hope that with this year, he was very, very good. And he can potentially get traded to like the Lakers and help LeBron. Or he could get traded here or there and be a significant portion, a 6th man on a championship level team. And then that 11.9% gets higher. And then we start thinking about Derrick Rose's career more as far as Hall of Fame candidacy. Because again, as much as I love Derrick Rose, it's hard for me to put him in the Hall of Fame, just thinking objectively. Blake Griffin's another interesting case. I would say he's also in the bubble, similar situation where like I would love to see him on a different team. I think a lot of people forget how good Blake Griffin was for it was like a 4 or 5 year period. But again, 4 or 5 year period is not good enough, especially when you don't have accolades on top of that. And you don't have awards on top of that. You don't have a championship. Like Blake Griffin's like all NBA 2nd team a few times, all NBA 3rd team a few times. And that's just because like last year he was all NBA 3rd team. So yes, at this point, he's being the Hall of Very Good with the potential of making it to the Hall of Fame. Yeah. Next. I see all 3 of these players being Hall of Famers. Personally. I would put all 3 players in the Hall of Fame. Like the best version of a dynasty we have seen in recent years. You know what I'm saying? And I don't see like LeBron's Miami Heat team as dynasties. It was 2 years, 2 championships in 4 years. And I mean, these guys got 3. And of course, Kevin Durant coming in and helping out does help that. But like part of having a dynasty is being able to have a good team and become a great team and stay a great team. Now, if it wasn't for injuries, I still believe that the Warriors will be in the playoffs right now. But Steph Curry's injury and Klay Thompson's injury in the finals hurt that. But I think it was actually Chris Bosh. I was listening to an interview with Chris Bosh, and he was with Zach Lowe, and he was saying that himself, that he looks at the Warriors and be like, man, I wish we were able to do that, able to have a dynasty instead of like, hey, we're going to be here for this many years, we're going to win just a couple championships, then we're going to go our separate ways, instead of like building this camaraderie of like, we're going to stay together for 8 years, and we're going to try to win 5 championships in 8 years, similar to like the Spurs type situation. I would say all 3 in my book would be Hall of Famers. Next, James Harden, Russell Westbrook, locks, put them in there. I don't need to tell y'all why these 2 players deserve to be Hall of Famers. Next, Pacers. I don't see a problem with having Victor Oladipo this low. Victor Oladipo's only been very good for like 2 seasons now. You know what I'm saying? He's only been very good for 2 seasons, and this season don't count because he's coming off an injury. So yeah, no problems here. So Domantas Sabonis is an interesting case because he is on the rise of stars, 1-time All-Star now. And I don't know what the trajectory of his career goes for the rest of it, but I can't complain about it being 0. Victor Oladipo has not had a Hall of Fame career just yet. So I'll keep it moving. And again, everything I'm saying right now is without knowing the future. I'm not trying to predict players' the rest of their careers. It's just knowing what I see right now. Okay. So how the heck is you considering Kawhi a Hall of Fame lock with this percentage and Paul George is on the bubble with this percentage? I think both of them are going to end up in the Hall of Fame, though. I think both of them will end up in the Hall of Fame. Kawhi, 2 championships, 2 Finals MVPs, and maybe a third in the near future. Paul George, MVP candidate last year, one of the greatest defenders of this generation. I think both of these players will end up in the Hall of Fame. Lakers, Rondo, AD, Dwight, locks. And I definitely see a lot of people on Twitter talking about Dwight Howard not being a Hall of Famer, and that just shows your age. You were not around for 2008. You were not around for that time period where Dwight was like one of the most dominant bigs I've ever seen behind Shaq. Yes, Hall of Fame lock. Rondo has an interesting case, and we talked about this on one of my streams recently. I could see Rondo being a second ballot Hall of Famer. But on the bubble, I would probably say it's 50-50. I would say it's probably 50-50. One-time champion, right? One-time champion, a part of the Cavs, or the Celtics. And who knows what happens with the Lakers this season. Next, Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson being on the bubble. Cool. Again, I'm not about to judge these rookie sophomore year players and talk about their Hall of Fame candidacy. But they both definitely have the tools to end up having Hall of Fame careers. Miami Heat, Jimmy Butler's. Ooh, Iggy at 6%. Whoa, I see. I've always seen Iggy as a Hall of Famer. Am I crazy? I've seen Iggy as a Hall of Famer in my book. 6% is extremely low. Maybe you think it's 50-50. That's cool. But 6%, we're talking 3-time champion, 1-time Finals MVP. I guess he's only been an All-Star maybe a handful of times. But those 3 championships were like, if you remember the situation with Andre Iguodala, he was one of the better players on the Warriors. I mean, he was one of the better players before he got to the Warriors in the league. And then he ended up in the Warriors. He's like, you know what? I'm gonna just be a mentor. I'm gonna take a back seat. I'm gonna be great when y'all need me to, but I don't need to drop 20 points per game, 18 points per game anymore. I would say Iggy is way more than a 6.2%. Jimmy Butler at a 42% makes sense. Bam Adebayo, Rising Stars, sure. Giannis, he is a lock. He's about to be a 2-time MVP and 2 times, and with a rest of his career ahead of him. He's only 26-ish. 25. Wow, he's only 25. He's still got 10 more years of basketball ahead of him. Yes, lock. Chris Middleton, I don't think he's there. Yeah, I don't think he's there. He would have to do a lot more to end up being on the Hall of Fame consideration. Karl-Anthony Towns, Rising Star, same D'Angelo Russell. I would put Karl-Anthony Towns way higher on the Rising Stars than D'Angelo Russell. But again, we need to see playoff success for Karl-Anthony Towns. We need to see him jump over into one of the all-NBA first or second teams. He'll always be a consideration for like the third, right? But it's hard to put him over Jokic and Joel Embiid because he's not winning games like those 2 other players. And even sometimes it's hard to put him over Rudy Gobert and as far as like the all-NBA voting. So he needs to take those next jumps in order to be on the bubble and then eventually be in the Hall of Fame. Next, I can't comment on any of this. They're still too young. Chris Paul, bona fide Hall of Fame lock, top 10 point guard of all time. Top 7 point guard of all time. Fight me. Orlando Magic, nope, nobody. Al Horford. I don't think Al Horford's a Hall of Famer. Nah. Nope, similar to Paul Millsap, who was his teammate. Hall of Very Good. Joel Embiid is on his way. I would definitely put Joel Embiid more on the bubble already, but Joel Embiid is still super young. If it wasn't for those 2 years of him being injured, you know what I'm saying, he'd probably be way higher on this list. Both of these guys have all of the tools to end up in the Hall of Fame. Then we have, I would say Devin Booker has all the tools, dropping 70 in a game and being one of the better scorers in this era of basketball. DeAndre Ayton still super young to tell. Melo and Dame is a lock for me, brother. Dame is a lock in the Hall of Fame. He is a lock in the Hall of Fame. He is a step above Hall of Very Good. He's a step above the Kemba Walkers, is what I'm saying. I'm saying he's a lock with Carmelo Anthony. I am saying he is a lock. All-star appearances, all NBA appearances, top during MVP vote in the season. He is a lock to me. He is a lock to me. And he's still, I don't know, what is he, 29? Still got years to go. I just want to see him get to that championship run, but I don't know if it'll happen. Last year's probably might be the closest he'll ever get. And even that is a great story to say with the wave off and all the other stuff. Sacramento Kings got him at 0, but y'all know they have these players that are on the rise. Lamarcus Aldridge. Lamarcus Aldridge's Hall of Fame candidacy. It's interesting. It's interesting. I don't know. I don't have an opinion on it right now. I would have to look at some numbers and think about all the things Lamarcus has done to really, And DeMar falls into the Hall of Very Good as well, and with the Joe Johnson's types. I think so. Shout out to both of them, though. Raptors. Kyle Lowry, count it. I'm so happy to see him as a lock. But Kyle Lowry could also be similar to what I was trying to say with Kemba Walker. Kemba Walker could have a Kyle Lowry second half of his NBA career where he wins a championship. You know what I'm saying? He wins a championship, and he is the glue guy, and he is the team leader and the captain of a championship team like Kyle Lowry was. Kyle Lowry is a lock. Yes, I know. I understand. A lot of people don't like Kyle Lowry. And I think that those 2 seasons of him struggling in the playoffs have turned people off to Kyle Lowry. But he does everything. He does everything. And the last 2 years of him being in the playoffs, he's been elite. Marc Gasol at 4.2% seems a bit low, especially when you talk about basketball Hall of Fame. You think about his overseas resume as well. He's got a few gold medals. He's got some silvers. I wouldn't say he's a lock, but I think it's way more than 4.2%. Way more than 4.2% when you talk about the entirety of his whole basketball playing career. And a Defensive Player of the Year, and now a champion. Pascal, rising star. Rudy Gobert is not a Hall of Famer at this point. 1.2%. Donovan Mitchell, rising star for sure. John Wall and Bradley Beal. I miss John Wall so much, bro. But I can say at this point in their careers, they're not Hall of Famers, but they still have years to go. I hope that John Wall comes back from his injury and he's better than ever. And Bradley Beal is still young, and he's putting up those points, and we just need him to have a little bit more playoff success. And you know what? The Wizards have always been decent in the playoffs. They just haven't been able to be great. And now Bradley Beal is better than he's ever been before. So hopefully John Wall can come back and he's healthy, and maybe the Wizards can be good again next season. It's a good article, a fun article. Again, stuff I agree with, stuff I disagree with, but overall, have fun. Leave a like.